Hi everyone, Ellie Everett's here. Today I am going to be showing you how I made my Mew Pudding romper and leg warmers. I'm really excited to be working on this costume. Mew Pudding is going to be my fourth Mew Mew costume that I've made. Yeah, fourth. Isn't that crazy? God. Well, and that's the fourth transformed Mew Mew. I've also made a whole bunch of other casual Mew Mew costumes. So anyway, as you can tell, I'm really excited by this series and I love cosplaying from it. So I'm excited to be adding another Mew to my repertoire. Now, personally, Pudding is one of my least favorite Mew Mews. I don't really love her character type, and the costume itself, I didn't think would be really flattering on me. I am a 5'9" grown adult woman. You know, I am not shaped like a 9-year-old. So I'm a little concerned that it won't really look good on me, but we are going to make it anyway and hopefully make it flattering as well. So why don't we go ahead and get started? Now, before we even start sewing, the first thing we need to do is pick out materials. For Mew Pudding, I'm going to be using a butter yellow linen. I chose linen because it's a very natural material, and linen also kind of suits her kung fu lifestyle. It's a natural material that would have been used on monks' gowns and things like that. And I'm also using a basic quilting cotton for my lining. After cutting my pieces out, I'm gonna go ahead and stitch them all together. Now you might be saying, Ellie, wait, what pieces? We haven't even seen a pattern yet. Well, for Mew Pudding, I have taken a princess seam bodice pattern and cut it off at the waist, and then I have smushed it together with a bloomer pattern that I attached at the waist. So it's kind of a hodgepodge of a couple patterns that I had in my stash. Now, after I attached the bloomers to the princess seam pattern, I went ahead and sliced the bloomers down center front, so that way it has a seam in it as well, just like the princess seam pattern would. So after I stitch all of these pieces together, I'm gonna go ahead and press open my seams. It's really important to press open your seams on your Mew Mew costumes because we're going to be adding some detail stitching afterwards. To add our detail stitching, I'm simply top stitching along either side of my seam, using my presser foot as a guide to keep my stitches as even as possible. Now I'm going to be adding this top stitching onto all of my seams except for center front, center back, and the inner leg seams. Now this is because these seams have not been completed yet. I've only stitched together my side front, my side back, and my side seam, so this way the top stitching would be a little bit easier. Once my pieces have all been top stitched, I'm going to stitch together the inner leg seam. And now once these have been stitched, we're going to attach our two halves of our bloomers together to make one awesome romper. Now I'm going to start by lining up my seams at the crotch, and then I'm going to move outwards, trying to keep the seam as even as possible. Then I'm going to stitch it together with a straight stitch. Once it's been stitched together, you're going to want to press the seam open just like we did before, and then try and add some top stitching. The top stitching of the seam can be kind of complicated since the top stitching on the seam can be kind of complicated since it's on a completed garment. It's kind of weird to top stitch, but try to do the best that you can since this is the center front of the costume. You want it to look really nice. Now that our romper is completely sewn together, we're going to go ahead and attach our lining and our fashion layers. I have put my lining inside of my fashion layer with right sides touching, and now I am pinning all the way along the top seam. Now this seam goes from the upper neck piece all the way around the back. And I'm doing my best to line up my seams as best as possible. We want to make sure these are lined up so that way if we have to make any adjustments later on, it's really easy to adjust these seams. Unlike if they were kind of mismatched or off a little bit, it'd be kind of a pain in the butt to adjust any fit. So once this is pinned, go ahead and stitch it together with a regular straight stitch. Now that I've stitched my lining and my fashion layers together, I'm going to go ahead and add space for a zipper. Here I am seam ripping open one of my side seams, and I'm going to be installing an invisible zipper here a little bit later. I think the most unique element of Mew Pudding's costume is this keyhole that her Mew pendant sits in. To make this, I'm first starting by making a pattern. I have put a piece of lined paper on my dress form, and I've also hung up one of my bases for my Mew pendant. Now I'm sketching out a shape that looks approximately like what I think this keyhole looks like. Now I'm going to cut out my paper pattern, and then I'm going to try it again on my dress form to make sure I like the shape. You can do any fine tuning that you want here on this pattern, but remember, it's better to make your keyhole too small at first than it is to make it too big. Now I'm taking my paper pattern and I'm tracing around it on the inside of my fashion layer. After that, I'm going to pin together my lining and my fashion layer and stitch around this shape using a straight stitch. Once our keyhole has been stitched together, go ahead and trim out the excess material on the inside, and then go through and clip your corners, so that way when we turn it inside out and press it, it'll lay nice and flat. So now we can turn our romper inside out. I'm gonna go ahead and press my keyhole to make it nice and flat. Look how nice that looks. I love keyholes. I think they're really, really cute, especially when they are crisp and clean. So next, we're going to be finishing off the legs of our romper. First, I'm matching up the seams of my lining and my fashion layer, and then once it's matched up, I'm going to go ahead and baste around the entire leg. Once it's been basted together, I'm going to cut off any excess material. Next, I'm going to be taking a strip of my brown pleather and turning it into a leg band. So I'm going to stitch it together real quick so it's the size of my leg. And now I'm going to be pinning the leg of my romper onto this leg band. Now we have a couple options here. If you'd like, you're more than welcome to run a gathering stitch and gather this leg, but I decided that I'm going to pleat it. I think that the pleats look really natural, and it's going to help me really control where I want the gather and the poof to be. So I'm going to start adding my little pleats. These are not mathematical pleats, these are not perfect pleats, they're just kind of random. But the one thing that they all have is they are all facing the same direction, and that is outwards from the center of my legs. This way, the poof is going to be kind of saturated more towards the outside of the hip rather than towards the inside of the crotch. Once our entire leg is pleated onto our leg band, I'm going to go ahead and stitch this on with a straight stitch. Once it's been stitched, you can turn over your pleather band, so this way is going to encompass all of our raw seams. Thankfully, when it comes to pleather, you don't have to worry about it fraying, so we don't have to add any sort of finishing to the edge of our pleather. I'm simply going to stitch in the ditch around my entire leg hole, catching my other side of my pleather, so we have a nice, clean, finished leg. Okay, so this costume is starting to look really, really, really cute. I absolutely adore the look of the poofy rompers, and I think that the little leg bands worked perfectly. It looks really, really cute. Next, I'm going to be adding bra cuffs into this costume. Now you might be saying, Ellie, why on earth aren't you using duck canvas and steel bones like you normally do? Now, I've thought about using a partial steel bone and duck canvas lining, but I decided that Mew Pudding wouldn't have something like that. Her costume is going to be a lot more easy to move in and flexible than the other Mew Mews. Because, well, first of all, she's 9, she's a monkey, and she does all sorts of aerobatics. She's not going to be doing flip turns in a steel bone bodice. That just doesn't make any sense. So I instead decided to forgo the steel bones and duck canvas, and I'm going to be using some bra cups to add some support instead. Now when it comes to bra cups, you have a couple options. You can make them yourself, you can buy them at Joann's, or if you're like me, I had a bra kind of bite the bucket last week, so I just cut the cups out of that and I have inserted them into this costume. Now I'm putting my bra cups between my lining and my fashion layer, trying to line up the curve of the cup with the curve of the princess seams as best as possible. Once they are pinned into place, I'm going to go ahead and quick stitch them onto my fashion layer. Now in hindsight, it would probably be smarter to attach these to the lining layer so you don't have any chance of your stitches showing. However, if you iron the costume and if you do really clean little quick stitches, you likely won't see much ripple or stitches anyway, so it's not a huge deal. Now that our bra cups are installed, I've also installed an invisible zipper onto the side seam, and now we are trying on our romper. I'm going to be attaching the top bit of my romper onto my Mew Pudding choker. I've already made my choker, and if you have questions about how this is made, that'll be coming in another video, so stay tuned. But as you can tell, I think that this is super duper cute. Now, what I've done here is I have pinned the choker around my neck, and now I am pinning the top flaps of my romper that are around my keyhole onto my choker. You're going to want these to be tight but comfortable. Tight enough that it's going to keep the romper up, but comfortable enough that it's not pulling on your neck. I'll admit I made mine just a little too tight, and when I was wearing this costume, it was the slightest bit uncomfortable. So that's something to be aware of. Once you're happy with where those are pinned, we are going to take our romper off, and then we are going to slit holes into our choker right where we attach the fur to the cotton, and then I'm going to insert the top of my romper into that hole and hand stitch it closed. You want to make sure that your hand stitches are very secure here because this is kind of what's holding up the entire costume, and you don't want this to be falling down. Once you've attached both of your flaps, go ahead and add a hook and bar to the back of the choker as well. Now we can move on to Mew Pudding's leg warmers. Here is the shape of my leg warmer. I cut one of my linen, one that was a little smaller of duck canvas, and I've made this set of belts from my pleather material. I'm going to start by closing up both of my leg warmers and making them into tubes. As you can see here, I'm folding these pieces in half, and I am marking my duck canvas layer in the same position as this little tab that is on the linen layer. Now, I have sewn both pieces together, stopping at that tab, and I'm going to stitch them together along the top. Once these are stitched together, we are going to add some clear elastic to the inside of the duck canvas layer. So this clear elastic is to help our leg warmers stay up. It's not going to be seen, so it doesn't have to be pretty, but it's very, very functional. Now I'm going to put on my leg warmer and test it for fit. I'm also going to be pinning the bottom of my linen layer to the bottom of my duck canvas layer. As you can remember, the linen layer is a bit larger than the duck canvas layer. So pinning this at the bottom will help create the poof that we see in Mew Pudding's leg warmers. Now I'm going to be pinning my pleather belts into place. I'm simply starting this where the leg warmers will open, and then I'm going to wrap it all the way around my leg, adjusting the gather to where I see fit. Now once these belts are where I like them, I'm going to pin them into place. I'm mostly pinning where the belts overlap, but I'm also going to pin in a few extra places onto the linen and duck canvas layers just to make sure that everything is held nice and secure. Now here comes the most tricky part with these leg warmers. We are going to stitch this pleather belt into place. Now, this can get pretty complicated. I definitely suggest wearing goggles while you're doing this in case you break a needle, and you just kind of gotta go with it. Go with the flow. But we are just stitching through the pleather belt and all the layers of our leg warmers. This is going to keep everything nice and in place, so it's important that we stitch this down. Once you've stitched that into place, it's now time to finish up the raw edges of our leg warmers. This extra flap that we left on our linen layer is an overlap, so that way our closure is perfectly hidden. I'm going to start by folding my linen layer over 2 times so it encompasses my duck canvas layer. This will hide all my raw edges and stop any fraying. I'm going to do this around the entire hem of my leg warmer. When we get to that flap, I'm simply going to fold it in half and then fold the raw edge over, so that way you still have a little bit of flap, but it's half as much as it was when we cut the piece. Once everything is pinned to where you like it, we are going to go ahead and hand stitch it down. This does not have to be pretty. It's on the inside, no one's going to see it. So I just whip stitched these raw edges. But if you want to go for extra craftsmanship points, you could also blind stitch. Once that's stitched into place, our leg warmers are nearly done. All that's left is to add some snaps for our closure. I'm using 3 sets of kind of small snaps for this. I'm going to stitch one side onto the flap and one side onto the inside of the other side. That was a lot of sides. I hope that makes sense. Now having these snaps here makes it really easy to take these leg warmers on and off. Otherwise, we would have to figure out some sort of elastic contraption to make it so you could take it on and off while still having the look of the pleather bands. So I think that this is a really great compromise, and since it's on the back of your legs, no one's really gonna see it. Plus, once it's on and snapped into place, you can hardly see it anyway. Now, once our snaps are in place and our leg warmers are finished, this costume is complete. I really like the way this costume came out. I'll admit I was pretty nervous about it at first. Like I had mentioned, pudding just isn't really my character type, but I think it turned out super duper cute. I especially love how fluffy the bottom of the romper is. I think it's really cute how poofy the legs look. And I also think the wig turned out super cute as well. You might notice that I did not do a video tutorial for this wig. However, I took a bunch of pictures and I made a written tutorial, and that's available on my Patreon. So if you're interested in the written tutorial, hop on over to my Patreon. All my supporters who pledge more than $5 a month get at least 1 written tutorial a month. I'm trying for 2, but at least this month I know they get the Mew Pudding wig tutorial. So go ahead and check that out. Like I said, in a future video, I'm going to be teaching you guys how I make my Mew poofs. That includes the arm poofs, the choker, and the garter. This is something that all of the Mew Mews have, so I think it's going to be a really handy tutorial. If you're interested in that, be sure to let me know in the comments below so I can bump it up on my schedule. All right, everyone, well, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think of my Mew Pudding costume. Like I said, I think it's super duper cute. I hope to see you guys in the next video, and I hope you are all staying safe and happy. Until next time, everyone, be sure to keep sewing, stay positive, and have fun. I'll see you later. Bye!